Welcome to my presentation. My name is Obed Herrera, and I want to start with a question. If I told you that one of the most important American painters of the 20th century didn't become famous until she was almost 80 years old, would you believe me? And what if I told you that when she finally walked into one of the greatest museums in the world for her own solo exhibition, it was the first time a black woman had ever done that in 1972? That woman was Alma Whoopsie Thomas. And this is the story of a woman who chose beauty as her resistance, joy as her statement, and color as her language. Alma's Whoopsie Thomas was born on September 22, 1891 in Columbus, Georgia. A time and a place defined by Jim Crow laws, racial segregation, and a daily danger for black Americans in the South. When Thomas was around 15 years old, the 1906 Atlanta race riot sent a wave of violence across Georgia. Her family made a life-changing decision. They packed up and moved to Washington, D.C. in 1907, part of what will become known as the Great Migration of Black Americans leaving the South for better opportunities. D.C. was still segregated, but it had something that Georgia didn't: schools that educated black students. Alma attended Armstrong High School, where an art class changed everything for her. In 1924, Alma Thomas became the first ever graduate of Howard University brand new Fine Arts Department, making her the first black woman and, in fact, the first woman of any race to earn a bachelor's degree in fine arts in the United States. She spent the next 35 years teaching art at black children at Shawn Junior High School in Washington, D.C. Then, these weren't wasted years. She organized students' art clubs, exhibitions, and lectured for a generation of young black students who had no other access to the art world. And she also co-founded the Barnett Aden Gallery, one of the very first black-owned private art galleries in the entire country, giving black artists a wall to hang their work when mainstream museums refused them. She kept learning throughout. She earned a master's from Columbia University. She took art courses at American universities in her 50s. She traveled to museums in New York and studied European masters. All of this was building towards something. Thomas retired from teaching in 1960 at age 69. Most people slow down at that age. Alma Thomas was just getting started. She developed what critics now call the Alma stripe. It was in small rhythmic dots of mosaic-like marks of vivid color, always inspired by nature. She would sit in her living room or garden and paint what she saw through the window: light through leaves, flowers in the yard, the shifting colors of seasons. She penciled her composition in advance on the canvas and then chose not to erase the pencil lines, letting them to stay visible as part of the art. Every inch in the canvas was intentional. Her technique drew comparisons to George Seurat's pointillism and to Byzantine mosaics, building a whole image from individual marks of color. She was part of the Washington Color School, a movement that believed color itself was the subject of painting. In 1972, when Alma Thomas was 80 years old, she became the first African American woman to have a solo exhibition at the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York City. One of the most prestigious art museums in the world finally opened its doors to her at 80. In 2014, her painting Resurrection became the first artwork by an African American woman to enter the White House permanent collection. It was purchased for $290,000 and hung in the old family dining room during the Obama administration, directly across from the doorway, so it was the first thing visitors saw when they walked in. Michelle Obama said she wanted other little black girls to see that they belong in the people's house too. Today, her work lives in the Smithsonian, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, MoMA, the National Gallery of Art, and the Art Institute of Chicago. Her Logan Circle home in DC is on the National Register of Historic Places. In 2025, the street was officially renamed Alma Thomas Way. Studying Alma Thomas directly inspired the painting I created for this project. When I look at her work, especially the way that she used repeated marks to build up a whole living form, and the way she set bold colors against equally bold backgrounds, I knew that was the direction I wanted to take. In my three painting, I was inspired by Thomas use nature not as something to copy literally, but as something to feel through color. She would look at the tree outside the window and ask, what is the emotional truth of the tree? What is the energy? And I asked myself the same questions. I answered with the white blossoms against deep blue, just as she answered with mosaic depths of green and gold. What Alma Thomas taught me is that restraint and repetition are not limitations, they are power. She used the same simple marks over and over and build something extraordinary. That is what I try to bring into my own work. In my personal notes, I learned 5 key things from Alma Thomas. One is timing. Alma Thomas found her voice at 69. That changes how I define success and readiness as someone creating art now. Greatness has no deadline. Thomas shows beauty during the civil rights era, segregation, and a lifetime of being overlooked. Her paintings are not angry, they are radiant. I now understand that choosing joy is not avoiding struggle, it is a form of strength. The fact that no major museum gave a black woman a solo show until 1972 with living memory means the walls that of museums are not neutral. They reflect choices about whose work is valued. Knowing this changes how I see every exhibition I walk into now. For the fourth thing I get from this presentation was that my three painting uses the same instincts of Alma Thomas spent a lifetime developing. African American contributions to art history are not separated from what we call mainstream art history. They are the foundation. I just didn't know how to look at it for until now. And the last thing was teaching. Thomas gave 35 years to educating black children before the world recognized her as an artist. Her teaching was not a detour from her real work. It was her contribution. That reframes how I value every person doing quiet, recognized work in their community.